Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Just Another Nobody. I have an admission. I'm a spoiler addict. Or at least a recovering one. Once upon a time there was a young Thomas who didn't know how to wait for anything, and so he would read book series as fast as he could, and occasionally, when he was in too much of a hurry, he would spoil them by reading the endings online. I thought, I can still enjoy a story if I've read the ending, which was partially true. There were endings that I still enjoyed. But over time, I started to see that this addictive consumption of endings started to not only decrease my enjoyment of some of this media, but also decrease my desire to finish it. There's a few shows that I did this with. I'm not going to give the spoilers away, but I did this with Gilmore Girls. I did this with Merlin, the BBC show. Back in 2011, there was some research done by Levitt and Christenfeld, who concluded that if you had a story spoiled, you had an increased enjoyment of it. And so I kind of used that as an excuse for, it's fine for me to read spoilers. I did it with, The Wheel of Time. I did it with Ender's Game, the ones about Bean. I thought that it was fine. And for one thing, because I loved stories, I just wanted to consume their summaries. In fact, I got into the habit of looking at movies. And part of it was to see if the movie had stuff in it I didn't like. Now, I thought that was a handy thing to know. Kind of referencing that study again, there were later studies that started to provide contradicting evidence. One was done at the University of Arkansas by Susanna Ode, or Oad. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. There are a few factors that led to people saying that, because she did her own separate research with various factors in hand. One of them was the type of spoiler, another was the type of story, and another was how having a story spoiled could make it easier for you to process it. That's why sometimes a story with a big twist is easier to consume on another watching, or is more interesting. Things such as The Sixth Sense. It's been 25 years, or however long it's been since that movie came out, so I'm not going to say the spoiler, but there's a twist. It's a Shyamalan. In the examples from that initial study where stories were seen as more enjoyable after they were spoiled, they tended to be some sort of mystery or ironic twist kind of stories, according to this later study by the University of Arkansas. There were a few different types of spoilers that they used, but essentially it was, here's the twist, or here's the ending. In order to explain a twist or an ending, you kind of have to give a short version of the premise leading to that ending, or at least the twist implies that. So in a sense, the reader is kind of cheating and getting that first read-through condensed into, hey, here's the setup and here's the spoiler. And then they go through the second read-through. They get that added benefit of the ease of understanding because they know the spoiler at the end. There are three types of spoilers talked about in this study. Short spoiled, so just a brief, here's just the straight spoiler, Bruce Willis is dead. One is long spoiled, a summary of the story, and the other is a thematic spoiler, where it's not only spoils the events of the story, but also spoils the theme or the message that the progression of events gives across. You'll see here, these are the results of this study. There were 4 stories people read. You'll see that on enjoyment and fun and suspense, when the story is unspoiled, those were always marked as higher. For all the other cases, except for occasionally the thematic, everything else is lower. Not a ton, because it's not going to always wreck your experience, at least with a short story. But the movingness, you can feel the momentum if it's already been spoiled for you. Or the lasting impression that feels stronger because you've had more time to drill in the message of the story into your head, because you got it from the beginning. Now, what did this research have to say about long-form storytelling or other media, like such as films, TV, audiobooks, etc. Not much. They focused on short stories because it's kind of hard to do that kind of a big study for longer form media. So now, for example, if the ending of, say, Avengers Endgame, which I'm not going to spoil here because I'm not a monster, if the ending of that were spoiled for me, I'd be pretty upset. But if the ending of Avengers Endgame were spoiled for me before I'd seen a single, like, Marvel movie, sheesh, I don't know how that would make me feel, because I wouldn't have any investment in what happened to anybody. I used to be kind of a spoiler for other people. That's a very bad thing. Very, very bad person. Right here. But over time I kind of learned I'd rather just share in like details on a pitch level or like the back of the book level. I learned for myself, if I spoil something that I'm strongly anticipating, that will drastically reduce my enjoyment of it, as well as reduce my desire to finish it. Like, I didn't watch, like, me and my wife were watching Gilmore Girls together, and I spoiled some aspects of the last couple seasons for myself, and I lost the desire completely to watch it. And that's because I got impatient, and I was like, I want to know, will they or won't they? I would spoil it for myself. I did that with several things. It just sucks away the fun. Now I avoid spoilers like the plague. The last point I want to make before I close up this video. For example, there's my mom, who she likes to read, she likes to watch shows, etc. But she'll often go into the library and read the last pages of a story before she gets a book. And the reason is, my mom, bless her heart, can be kind of sensitive to, like, terrible things happening to people. I know some people, like, especially, let's say, fans of, horror. Like my brother-in-law, he likes to be surprised on whether it's going to be a terrible ending or not. To his credit, that means it's like legit. You're like, you go into reading a Stephen King book and it's like, well, either one of three things is going to happen. The character's going to be a little bit happy at the end, or the character's going to be crazy, or the character's going to be dead. You're hoping for this one, but it could be crazy or dead just as easily. Stephen King characters never really end up happy. When I'm giving book recommendations to people, I try to keep in mind what kind of stuff they don't like. If a main character or the main character dies and they have some sort of half-hearted attempt to make you feel better about it at the end, I don't want to read that. If something horrible happens to a character you really like, I don't want that spoiled for me, but I do want to know what kind of a story it is. Is this the kind of story where that could happen? That just has to do with taste. Just let people enjoy books. In summary, don't spoil things. You can carefully try to find out if it's the type of story you like. If it's going to have things that are gonna trigger you, either legitimate triggers like psychological, emotional triggers, or I'll call them fake triggers, where you're just kind of offended by something. Because real triggering into like post-traumatic stress or anxiety and things like that is a real thing. And I've had stories do that to me before. I don't want to have a story that puts me through certain psychological experiences. That sort of, not really a spoiler, but at least a warning, I feel, for yourself and other people is okay and is not going to ruin your enjoyment. It's sort of a genre category awareness. So it's like somebody recommends something to you, say, well, is this the kind of story where this sort of thing could or would happen? Like, I don't prefer that much grimdark fantasy, where the worst thing that can happen doesn't always will. Moral of the story is, don't spoil things and enjoy reading or watching or listening or playing a video game. This has been another episode of Just Another Nobody. Peace.